Shrikant until Shrikant is done with work. Tonight we'll be covering chapter 17, verses 17 to 19 to start, and then verse 20 to 22. And David happily agreed to read for us tonight. So whenever you're ready, David.
Okay, thanks, Ebony. So picking up, this is a slight repeat of what we did last week because Yogeshwara didn't go through the entire commentary. So we'll talk about that. Verse 17, beginning. These three kinds of austerities, when practiced without hankering for fruitive rewards by devout persons of ardent faith, is designated as being in the nature of goodness. That austerity which is performed ostentatiously for the sake of gaining respect, honor, adulation, and reward is unstable and unenduring in this world, and is stated as of the nature of passion. That austerity which is performed by the whims of the foolish, causing pain to oneself or for the harm of others, is described as of the nature of nescience.
Thank you, David. Yogeshwara.
Shraddhaya paraya taptam tapastatrividham narai apalakamshibhi yuktai satvikam parichakshate. Krishna is talking about what Shraddha means and what are the characteristics of people who have a particular type of Shraddha. In Shraddha, we've talked about the type of food that different types of people eat. And we've also talked about what types of yajna they do and what intentions they have behind doing those types of yajnas, those types of sacrifices in their lives. Now Krishna has started about what tapaha means, what types of tapaha people do, and what types of intentions they have when they're doing these types of tapaha. As we looked at last week, tapaha, how it's different from sacrifice, how it's different from yajna, is that in yajna, in sacrifice, you are allowing something to be given out. Yeah? Something that is valuable to you. You give it out. You allow it so that you can give it to somebody else, or you can give it to nature. Now, what tapaha means here is that you are allowing something to come into your life. And when you're allowing something to come into your life, it may be any activity that you are doing, any habit that you are doing, and it may also be some subtler things like some emotions that you want in your life, some types of thoughts that you want in your life, something that you want to take into your life. As we had talked about, that both of them are a type of heat. They create a type of friction in our life. Because when there's something that you hold valuable, being able to leave it from your own possession, that also creates some friction in your mind, in your thoughts. Should I not? Even tapaha, bringing something into your life, it creates a type of friction in your life. Like if you want to make up a habit in your life, there is a type of friction that comes in. And even when you want to leave a habit that you've been so used to, it also creates this friction in your life. So both of them have this friction in themselves. Both of them have this type of heat, this type of fire within them. Krishna talked about what tapaha means and 3 ways tapaha can be done. The first one was through the body, bodily austerity. Then the second one was through your speech. The third one was through your mind. And by mind, Krishna took all the faculties. He took faculty of thought, of emotion, of intellect, all of them. One thing to note here about Deva Puja, there was just one thing that I wanted to talk about. First, as a summary of tapaha, and then in sharirik tapa, in bodily austerity, there is this part of Deva Puja that you can see that what you get to experience, the ultimate in, that you revert to. Now, there is a point in Indian philosophy, like Deva Puja, and there's so many devtas in Indian philosophy. Now, if you ask anybody, they will say God is one. They won't say God are many. They will say God is one. Then why so many devtas? So there's this one subtle point here, that why are there so many devtas? Why are there so many icons that Hindus or Indians bow down to, revert to, yet the ultimate is only one? So one thing that is noticeable is that the ultimate is so unmanifest that it doesn't show itself. It is everywhere, but doesn't show itself. And then there is also another thing, that there are places that it shows itself, however unmanifest it may be, but then it is how it shows up in the manifest that these devtas are viewed. Now, the view of these devtas is that if you can see the ultimate in anything, now this means totally anything, whatever comes up to you, whatever reverses with you, whatever vibrates with you, that if you can see the ultimate within that, that is a devta for you. And in that case, looking at it, that if you can look at a devta from that perspective, that you are trying to look for the ultimate, for that unmanifest. So whatever manifest you can get to look at into the unmanifest, you will revert to that, you will worship that. Another point is that when the ultimate comes upon you, like we have talked about the examples of the ocean, whereby we are all a drop. And then when we fall into the ocean, we become one with the ocean. That is the Advaita. Now, when we are going to become one with the ocean, one thing that we totally need at that point in time is surrender. Why we're not able to drop into the ocean, even though we are the drop now, at this point in time, is that we are not able to surrender. We are not able to bow down. So another point in the Devta is that there is this subtle practice of bowing down. And whatever you can bow down to, whatever you can see in front of you and you can bow down to, it is an added opportunity. Why not? Because at the end, that is what you're supposed to do with the ultimate. And in a way, if you can practice that from now, when the ultimate shows up, you will not stand straight still. you will also be able to bow down and accept what it has for you. Then also bowing down. The main point in bowing down is not the other, because we also saw that Deva Dvija Guru Prajna. The main point in bowing down is changing yourself. When you bow down, rather than paying respect to another person, first it changes yourself. And when you change yourself, then you can see the ultimate, because the ultimate is not fixed in one place, that is here and is not here. But when you change yourself, you are able to see that and manifest. That is manifesting everywhere. So these subtle practices that are put in place, sometimes they lose their quality. And this is what Krishna is pointing out, that all this, whether it is bowing down, whether it is, whether it's bowing down or whether it is about saying the right speech, or it is about in your mind having the right types of thoughts. And even Krishna talked about bhavashan suddhi, meaning having the right types of emotions towards people, having the right types of emotions towards nature, towards living things, having the right types of emotions even when no one or nothing is in your surrounding, when you're alone. Sometimes what happens is we can't stay alone. We need something. We need a trigger for ourselves. Like, we just can't sit. If we have a phone, we'll start scrolling on the phone, even though there's nothing that we want to look up. We'll just start scrolling, trying to find something to take our mind's attention. So that's where Krishna is saying that, can you be alone? And that's why Krishna here puts Maunam, which is being silent, in the category of the mindly austerity, rather than that aspect of speech that austerity has. And that is really like, why would Krishna put Maunam, which is silence, in the category of mindly austerity rather than that of speech? Why so? This is because being silent is more of the mind. If you can be silent with your speech and then also being silent in your thoughts, if you can just pay attention to something and have all your thoughts clear, that is a really great thing for mindly austerity. Because that is whereby you can keep everything aside when keeping aside is needed. And you can take something in your attention when that is also needed. It is in your control. It is in your hands. Things are not out of control in your mind. You know what is happening in your mind each and every second. So Krishna is saying here that Shraddhaya Paraya Taptam Tapastat Trividham Nare. These three types of austerity. He who does it with the utmost Shraddha, the utmost faith. Now, I would also like to put more translations of Shraddha into context, whereby Shraddha, as we have talked about Shraddha, it means something that you can devote your life to. So even devotion, it's like a translation of Shraddha rather than Bhakti, because Bhakti is unconditional love. It is like love and then the next step that could be above love and beyond love. Now, where devotion comes in is more towards Shraddha. And devotion, it's like, can you devote your life to your child? So that's devotion towards your child. Can you devote your life towards study? That is devotion towards study. Can you devote your life towards something? Now, when you devote your life towards something, Krishna is saying that having done that, then tapaha is really easy. You're able to do this tapaha with all the devotion, all the faith that you have. And then Krishna is saying that apalakankshabhir yuktai satvikam parichakshate. How should that person be? He should not have any type of attachment towards the fruits. He should be non-attached to any types of fruits that this tapa, this austerity may also bring up. Why Krishna is saying this? Now, bringing these two things together, devotion and not having any attachment towards the fruit. There is a new type of context that Krishna puts forward, is that the more devotion you have towards something, the less you need to think about the fruits, because you're devoted to that tapa, you're devoted to it. When you're not devoted to it, you need all these aspects of fruit. What type of fruit I'm going to get out of it? What am I benefiting from it? That is when I can do something like that. Rather, Krishna here is saying that be devoted to it. You'll not have to think about the fruits, and you'll be able to do the action for itself rather than for the fruit. And the opposite is also true. Like when you're always thinking about the fruits, you'll never be able to get that level of devotion. And the less you think about the fruits, the more you're able to be devoted to that particular thing. Whether it is your work, whether it is a particular type of study, or it's even as simple as reading a book, right? The more you're only devoted towards the fruits, attached towards the fruits, your devotion towards it, your devotion towards the book is reducing. The more you're devoted towards the book itself, like reading the book, the action of reading the book, then the less you need to think about the fruits. And those two things go hand in hand. When you want to cultivate something within your life, then this is really important. Because when you're thinking about the fruits and you're thinking about the action, what happens at this point in time? Mostly in our lives, we want the fruits, but we are low in the action. Like we can see our own lives. We can see so many things, like for example, in YouTube, or we can see people having talent in so many aspects in their lives. We can see business people who have gotten to the best they can. We have seen sports people who can get to the best they can. Now, what happens is we have all these types of fruits that are within ourselves. We want to do this. I wish I could do that. I wish I could do that. Now, what happens is your action is not meeting that fruit. The level of action is not there. But Krishna is saying that put your level of action up to that. If you can meet that, then you'll not have to have all these attachments towards the fruits. And when you don't have these attachments towards the fruits, the level of action will automatically rise. When the level of action automatically rises, you don't need to think about the fruits because they're going to come anyway. It's like taking a long-term example, like a farmer, he sows his seeds. Yeah. Now, if he goes there and tries to check every day, has it grown or has it not grown? Has it grown or has it not grown? And then sometimes he also like gets into the ground and then says, has even the smallest sprout taken form? Then what will happen is that seed will not sprout. It will just die because every day he's trying to get into the soil and trying to check whether that seed has sprouted. Now, when you're always towards the fruit, you're always thinking about this action in relation to the fruit. Has it sprouted any fruit? Rather than just for the action, just for what it is meant for. And there, what happens is we become short-sighted towards the action. We have this narrow view towards the action. Then we want to also be able to see all those other benefits that that action brings to us. We'll only see that which we are attached to. We won't be able to see the wider view of what nature wants to show us, of what the unmanifest has for us. So Krishna is saying that that is for Sattvika. What about the Rajasa type? Satkarmana pujartham tapodambhena chaivayat kriyate tadiha proktam rajasam chalamadruvam. What does the person who is of Rajasa type do this austerity for? Why does he do this austerity? Now, there's one point to note here, that he will do the same type of austerity that a sattvic person is doing. By the body, he will bow down to something, to somebody. He will keep pure, and he will also have ahimsa in his life. He will have harmlessness towards other people in his life. Then, even by speech, he will be sweet. And even by mind, he will be at peace and he will try to keep that bliss within himself. But why? Why would he do that? One thing is for satkara, so that other people look up to him, that he has something within himself. And you can see that when somebody does that, that people should look up to me, that I have value within myself because I am doing this type of austerity. What happens is, for a short time, you feel that at least he's doing something that is named austerity. But then in the long term, if you see what happens in the long term is that he never gets to what austerity is meant for, because his view is so narrow. His view is just because I want something out of it, because I want my pride out of it. That's the next point that Krishna makes, mana. Because I want my pride out of it, I will do this. Because I want people to bow down to me, I will bow down to something else. Or rather, because I want to be related to the community, or the fact that I want to be looked up in the community, I will bow down to something or accept something. For example, even accepting that God exists, or accepting that the ultimate principle exists. Why do we do it? Is it just for getting into a community, or is it for maybe our status rises in our community that we are doing that? Or is it just that everybody is into that view, so why not? We should just get into that view. So why are we doing it is more important than the fact that we're doing it. Anything good is good for its own sake, rather than why we're doing it. So if we can leave that why, if we can leave all that clutters it, and do the action for its own self, then we get to the essence of the action. Then we get to what the action is really meant for. Then we get to what austerity is really meant for. Then another point that Krishna has made is puja. Others should revert to me. That's why I revert to somebody else or something else. For example, if I bow down to God, then other people will also bow down to me because I preach to them. Now if that comes up, then there is that push and pull, that if I don't get this out of it, then I also have, is God really existing or not? You also have that doubt. Or should I do this type of action or not? Because people are not bowing down to me. Why should I bow down to something else? And you can see that most of the time, like when a person is bowing down to God, he has all these demands in front. And then when those demands are not fulfilled, it's like, why am I bowing down to you and you're not fulfilling my demand? So you can see that constraint that is always there, that we always bring up. We are always asking for something in return. It's like as if we're doing a business. Yeah? Like, because I've done this much for you, you should do this much for me. And I will only invest in you. Like, I will only invest into the unmanifest of God because he invests in me, because I get something out of him. So should we do that because it benefits us? Or should we have shraddha? Should we have devotion because something really exists? And that question is really profound. And if it gets into our lives, if we start living for something that really exists, rather than something that just benefits us, or something that we're getting value out of, then we can take a step towards the ultimate. Then we can take a step towards what really exists for its intrinsic nature, for itself, not for our own benefit. Then the fourth point that Krishna is saying, that dambhena, that there will also be an aspect whereby we'll put all these faces in front of ourselves and we will want to show that, oh, I have the most faith. And when that happens, then you're of the Rajasic type, rather than the Sattvic type that Krishna is trying to pull us towards. Now, when we're of the Rajasic type, when we're putting up all these faces in front of ourselves, not to show what we truly are, then Krishna is saying that you're the Rajasic type, and check. If we can check and know what type we are, then there is an aspect where we can improve. There will be a light that will show us where to go. And the last point at the end of the verse that Krishna is putting forward is chalam adruvam. Now, Krishna here is pointing out that there will be these times whereby you see a person who is of Rajasic nature, he is having this type of devotion, his type of faith, and he is fixated onto it. And you'll feel like, is he of the Sattvic nature that he really knows it exists? Or is he of the Rajasic nature? Now, you'll also see that the Rajasic type people, they will be so fixated on this, chalam, adruvam. Yeah? They will be so holding on to this. They will not be able to leave it. In this aspect, it will feel like, are they Sattvika? Do they really know that this type of unmanifest exists? And the answer Krishna is giving is no. They don't know that it truly exists. What they are holding on to is their own benefit rather than the action or the unmanifest itself. What they're holding on to is their own benefit. And when you see your own benefit in something, there is that tendency of holding on to it so tight you can't leave it because it benefits you. And Krishna is saying that holding on to it so tight, sometimes what happens is when we want to capture air within our hands, when we hold it so tight, what happens is we don't get air into our hands when we fist it out. What happens is all the air remains outside rather than inside. Rather than capturing it, we lose it. So when a Rajasic type of person wants to capture this within his own benefits, within his own arms, what happens is the unmanifest is left outside and he just clings inside. So this is the instance that happens here. Next, Krishna is saying that there is the tamasa type, the ignorant type of person. Mudhagrahenatmano yat idaya kriyate tapah parasyotsādhanāर्थam va tattamasamudaritam. There is this ignorant type of person. He does not know whether something exists or doesn't exist. He does not know why something is supposed to be done. And ignorant in this context mostly doesn't mean that doesn't know anything, but mostly it means that he knows things in a wrong way. That is an ignorant person. So when you know things in a wrong way, what will you do? You will do all these types of austerity. And they will mostly be of harming your own self. Because you see that austerity, what austerity means for other people is like bringing in new habits that are maybe they create some friction in your life and there is some back and forth, push and pull. So what they do within their lives is bring as much harm for themselves as possible. Using that. Like what they would like to do here is that they find the joy just in harming themselves. Or Krishna continues that parasyot sadhanartham va. Or it is just for harming other people. Now, we don't get the point right when we can't wrap our minds right when I talk about harming yourself. But then we see the point where Krishna is saying that harming others. There are a type of people who, when they harm other people, they get that subtle type of joy within themselves. Like, yes, I've been able to harm somebody else. Or yes, I was so jealous about somebody else and I'm able to harm them. So this type of austerity is done for harming other people. Now, what harm do you do to other people when you're doing this type of austerity? What you're harming other people towards is you are doing this type of austerity, which is tamasa. What happens is you're trying to create a conflict within other people. For example, you're doing some type of austerity that is tamasa, like maybe just bringing some habit into your life, let's say. Now, what you will do is you will put so much value to that habit, not because it has so much value, but what you'll show others is that, oh, I'm doing this. Look at me, I'm so great. Now, what happens is why you're doing that is not for your greatness, but to show others that they are down because they don't have that habit. When it's for your own greatness, that will be Rajasa. But when it is to show that other people don't have that habit, and for that reason, they should feel low in their lives. They should feel like they're missing out something that I am getting onto. Whereas you're not getting into something. You know that yourself. You're not experiencing anything else. But then just to show that other people should be shown down, and they should have the emotions down. They should have their thoughts down. Now that is parasya utsadana. That is like you're trying to harm other people indirectly. Now sometimes what happens is there is a thin line between this, that you're trying to encourage some people to do something good, and then you use some types of words that make those people feel low, rather than encouraging them to get onto this good habit. So that thin difference makes on to whether you're sattvika or you're a tamasic type of person. And when Krishna is making this subtle distinction, sometimes it's really easy to just go on and read and miss them. But when you find them, you see that they're so subtle and they're so profound that missing them is like you're missing life. If you don't find them within Gita, then you're not getting the essence of Gita, because Krishna is saying so much profound things that if we miss them, sometimes we'll miss living our own lives. We'll miss the point of what austerity itself means.
Thank you, Yogeshwar. Give me just a minute. I'm going to allow people to unmute themselves. So now is the time for questions and comments. If anyone has a question or a comment, they can type exclamation point in the chat. So while everybody's gearing up, I do have some questions, Yogeshwar. I'll start with the first one. When you were talking about having the right types of emotions, what is the right type of emotion?
Yeah, so one thing to note right now, where we are getting emotions from is a place like, for example, TV, movies, adverts. So we're getting all our emotions from there. So what is happening is other people are pulling the strings, and we are supposed to get those types of emotions that they are wanting to put into us. Whether it's YouTube, Instagram, Snapchat, or like all these types of social media, and this vast media itself. Because right now it's so vast, you even lose track of what you want to see or what you don't want to see. Like you lose that. Because when you get onto one type of media, you just scroll and scroll for hours and you even get lost. So what happens in that point in time is that you're getting these types of emotions from other things because you don't have anything within yourself. You just want to put something within yourself. It's like you feel empty and then you just want to fill yourself with anything that comes forward. Whether it's good or bad, it's like, it's fine. As long as it captures my attention, I'll go on to it. Because sometimes you don't see the bad in something that captures our attention. Why? Because we don't have anything else good to do. Because we don't have a comparative for it. Like, can I create an emotion within myself without an expectation of something in front of me? That is where meditation comes in. That what meditation is meant for, yes, at the end level, it's like to get to the unmanifest. It's like to get to that supreme. But at the first levels, what it is meant for is that you can create something within yourself that you're not ever created before. And when you can create something within yourself, automatically, what happens is that becomes more important for you. Because what you can do with that is that at whatever time you want, you can create that emotion. Like, for example, just imagine that if you could create love for yourself whenever you wanted, just whether you're alone, whether you're with other people, or whether you're only one person, whether you could just create love for yourself, wouldn't it just be good? Like, if you can just create it for yourself. And then the aspect comes that when you can create it for yourself, you're not dependent on other things, on other people. Now, when you're not dependent, you see that you can be independent. Now, that's not just for independence. What that takes you towards is you realize that the world itself is interdependent. And one thing that is so worry about this is that when you're so dependent onto things, you think that you know that things are interdependent. But what you're experiencing is dependence. Whereas when you're independent, you can go onto that aspect of interdependence. Because there you'll not go wrong on the interdependence, because you're not dependent on anything. When you see that interdependence within everything, like I am dependent on nature and nature is dependent on me. When you see that interdependence that is truly there, rather than, because being dependent means that you're going to use something and throw it when you don't need it. You're going to use it for your benefit. Where this aspect comes in with your emotions is that what happens with us is that when something or somebody can create an emotion for us, we keep them with us. When they stop creating that emotion for us, it's like use and throw. We just throw them away from our lives. What happens there is that you use them rather than being with them. And when you can be with them, it's rather like you're having them because not because you benefit from them, like you're getting an emotion from them, but because it is just good to be with somebody else, just for the intrinsic nature for it itself. Because the emotion that they can give you, you can create within yourself. But you see that interdependence between people that you can keep with other people. And using that aspect of emotion now, what the right emotion is. Now, what the right emotion is something that you can create for yourself rather than you having it from other people. That is the right emotion. Now, somebody would like me to say that the right emotion is love or the right emotion is bliss. But what happens with that is that when we can get that love from somebody else, we'll just stop at that. And when we stop at that, we lose that intrinsic value of the emotion. We lose the emotion very easily because it's brought by somebody else. Rather, when we can make it for ourselves, when we can be in the state that we would like to be at any one point in time, then that is the right emotion because it's not dependent on anybody else. The remote control of your life is within your own hands.
Thank you, Yogeshwar. That was very powerful. Up next, I have George, followed by Joe. And if anyone else wants to make a comment or ask a question, you can type exclamation mark in the chat. George.
Thank you, Avanique. I wanted to address the point of doing one's devotion without one's mind being on the reward. And this, my understanding of this comes from Buddhism, the idea that to the extent that we cultivate a desire, even if from doing a devotion, we're putting ourselves in a state of not being complete, of wanting something, so that it seems that it's wise to do the devotion, enjoying the devotion, which you're enjoying in real time, without having your mind go to rewards, which often are in the future and which you can't immediately access. So my question, Yogeshwar, is, does Krishna say that also? That basically the idea is like when you put yourself in a state of desire, you're basically separating yourself from a sense of wholeness. You're creating in yourself a need that doesn't need to exist.
Yes, so what I would like to point towards is verse 17. So that is basically what being sattvic means, is that one, you're full of devotion because Shraddhaya Paraya Taptam. And the second point that Krishna makes there is Afala Kamshibir, means you should not be attached to the fruits. If you have those two things, then you are sattvika. That is the definition of sattvika. Now, there may be different words used to this, because Krishna uses the word sattvika, because Krishna realizes that when you're in a state, that is different. And when you're beyond these three steps, because the ultimate is also beyond sattvika. So what Krishna puts forward here is that sattvika is still a type of state, bodily or mental state that you'll have. Rather, you have to go beyond that, which is the ultimate. And when you go beyond that, as we have seen in chapter 14, and we'll also see ahead in chapter 18, which is moksha sannyasa, it's even leaving these three steps. But then what Krishna is taking us towards is that if you can get to the best state that you can be in, it's really easy to leave these three steps because you're in the moment of bliss. And when you're in the moment of bliss, living is much more easier. And when you're in the moment of depression or in the moment of trying to cling to something, because if you can't even leave what you're benefiting out of, how could you leave something for the unmanifest? Because unmanifest is so, like, it's so abstract that living for the unmanifest is like, it can't even strike your mind. You can't even have a thought about it. So that's why Krishna is talking about being sattvika, and then a step above, which Krishna is going to point out in chapter 18, is that even beyond these three steps, there's something. And when that something comes, being sattvika is automatic. But if you want to become sattvika right now, then the last step will still be something that you have to go towards.
Thank you, Yogeshwar. Up next, I have Joe.
Yeah, so my question is mostly surrounding verse 19 and this idea of performed with effort and suffering imposed on oneself, or else with a concentration of the energy and a will to do hurt to others, is said to be tamasic. What kind of harm are they talking about to others, like in a modern day sense? And how, in a sense, I see this as something as kind of unsustainable. When I look at it, I think of kind of unsustainable in the sense that just how you engage with people, even the things that you do to yourself as well. Some of the short-term types of thinking that people do that ultimately, result in their, like, I'm trying to come up with something that where it's like a temporary result where they're satisfied. But basically what I'm really kind of curious as to is to really know what they're talking about when like inflicting suffering on others or themselves.
Yeah, so one example I'd like to give, like modern day, like just take an example of depression. Yeah.
Right.
Now, or like really being serious all the time. So one thing about depression is that you're harming yourself. Yeah, you know it that you're harming yourself. And then another aspect is that you can't leave it. Now, Krishna would say that the reason why you can't leave it is that you've seen something good in it. Like you feel there's a joy that you get in it. That's why you can't leave it. Because once you know it fully, there is no way you can't leave it. So one thing in depression that happens is because depression itself is tamas. That's why I'm giving this example. So when a person gets into depression, he not only harms himself, he also harms people around him. Whereby, when a person gets angry, he's not harming himself only, because he is harming himself. Yeah, all these toxic types of hormones and depriving your own body of any bliss and always being angry. So what happens in that point in time is you're also transferring that anger onto other people. Certainly, but you don't know it. Because when you are angry, people around you also become angry towards you. Yeah? Because you're showing them that anger is something that is normal for you. And what response will you get out of anger? It's anger. That's the only response you can get. And another point about anger and depression is also that when you're depressed, you're down on yourself. Now, when something even small comes in the outside, like in your surrounding, something small just touches you, it's like a volcano. You can't accept it. Yeah? So that's how you are destroying other people around you as well. Because when you're a volcano every time, and you'll erupt anytime, nobody knows when. They can't even touch you. They can't even interact with you. And they know whenever they will try to interact with you, you'll just blast out. So when such things are happening, you're not only hurting yourself, you're also hurting people around you by your words, the words that you'll say, by your actions, and also the emotions that you're certainly transferring onto them. Because we don't realize, but then what happens with emotions is when you're in a certain kind of emotion, the other person also turns into that emotion. Like you can see these emotions transferring between people. When you're angry, people around you will, not everyone, because everyone has a different level of being angry, but then those who are most receptible will become angry very, very easily. And when you're loving around people, they will automatically be loving towards you. Like there's no way somebody will just be angry on you when you're loving onto them every day. So that type of contrast always comes.
Yeah, that's very, very powerful, actually. And that's shown sometimes when, sometimes married couples or even couples or friends feel lonely. One is not feeling heard by the other, so that even though the two people are together, they may feel actually lonely. So that's interesting to see how, yes, your actions are how they're harming someone else. And I guess it's the opposite of self-realization, which we were talking about a little bit earlier as well. But thank you.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you, Yogeshwar. Yogeshwar, I have one more question. Are you there, or did he step away?
Yeah.
Okay. So my question is, you were talking about being silent in thought and silent in speech. Could you expand a little more on being silent in speech?
So, yeah. So being silent in speech. Now, the silence that Krishna here is talking about is not only he has put it in the category of mindly austerity rather than that of speech. So when you talk about mindly austerity and then you're saying silence, what Krishna is trying to say here is that there is a surplus silence that manifests within your own self. For example, you may be talking, but then inside yourself, you're silent. Now, that's rather like a bigger example, but then like a small example first, that when you can be silent on your own, just be quiet. What happens if you can be quiet for long periods of time? There is that certain kind of energy that can manifest within you, that you're able to talk and people listen to you. Now, this happens in all aspects of life. Like, if you can have monam within yourself, then you have more time to think rather than just convey information. This is the aspect that I'm coming on to. Not that, so just not speaking right now, you have more time to think, contemplate on it, and then when you convey, you're going to convey something that has weight. Another point here is that that is still in thought, yes? So we can see that aspect because this is a small example, something that we can see. Now, going deeper into that aspect is that when we can stay mona, even in our thoughts, what happens then? There is no need to speak. Our emotions, our actions just say everything. When our emotions and actions say everything out, then what does happen? We can transfer emotions more certainly than just speaking. We can transfer our, like, something through our actions. And when we can transfer something through our actions and emotions, sometimes it's even more profound than just speaking. Because when you speak, sometimes we are so eloquent in speaking, like we have chosen our words from before and we have written down some compositions from before. And speaking out that is really easy because we've done it before. But then putting it into your actions, putting it into your emotions is really hard. And when you can do that and allow that to transfer onto others just by that, without speaking, then know that your actions have become more profound. And know that your emotions have become more profound. Because when you can do that just without speaking, like without talking, without communicating, then you know that you have other modes of communication rather than just speech. Now, getting deeper onto that is that sometimes you can even speak, but then there will be this mona within your heart. It's like, it's not that you're speaking just your thoughts, you're speaking your whole being out. So you don't need to think a lot more about it. You're speaking what you're doing every day. You're speaking what emotions you have. So it's not like you'll have to have a composition written from before, what you have to speak out. You can speak yourself out. You can speak, but at your heart, you don't have all these words tangled around, that this is what I have to speak out. Now, when that happens, there is this kind of silence that happens within yourself. When that silence is profound, because this silence that Krishna is talking about is not just the silence of speech, it's the silence of mind. When you have that silence within yourself, even when you're speaking, even when you have an emotion, even when you're doing any action through your body, you within yourself, you're in bliss. So what that silence means is more into respect to bliss whereby you're not wandering onto your thoughts. You're not wandering onto your speech. What do I have to say? You're not wondering about what do I have to do next. You're just silent within yourself. You're just at bliss with whatever you have.
Thank you, Yogesh, for that. Really helped me understand that concept. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, go ahead.
If nobody else has anything else to say about this, I'll just like to point out, like austerity in its own self, how we look at it. In Indian philosophy, tapaha, the main thing that is joined with tapaha is mainly taking up a vrata. Vrata meaning that I will do this for this particular time. For example, say that austerity in India means that when a particular day comes, I will not eat the whole day. Yeah, like it's the same thing like in Muslims, when Eid comes, they will eat after night. They will eat when the sun has gone down. Or in Christians, mostly Catholics, I see this, like there is this Lent period for 40 days. They have this period where they fast anything, like they fast anything. And so in India, there are particular days whereby austerity is supposed to be. And what it is called is, like, intriguingly, it's called upavasa. Now, what upavasa means is to sit near. Upavasa. Vasa, even in Hindi, like if somebody is conversant with Hindi, vasa means to sit or to be near something. And upa means to be near, and vasa means to sit. So upavasa together means just to sit near the ultimate. That is what upavasa means. Now, what happens in these points in time, what it was really meant for, austerity itself, is that just imagine a point in time whereby you're listening to such kind of music. It is rhythmatic, it is like sort of soothing. It is that kind that doesn't just excite you, but then it also puts you in a point of bliss, a state of bliss. What happens when you're listening to such types that takes your attention? You forget about eating, you forget about drinking at that point in time. It may even be 3 hours and you don't feel like doing anything. So what that is pointing towards is that you're so near the unmanifest, you're so near the principle that you forget what the state of your body is. You forget your thoughts. You forget what types of emotions your body has. And that, in essence, is a type of samadhi. It's a type of cervical samadhi, to be exact, according to the Yoga Sutras. So when you're in that type of cervical samadhi, what happens? You forget that you have to eat. You forget that you have to drink. Now, when that state arises, is when upavasa manifests itself automatically. So that is what it is meant for. It is like, try to do something so good, like getting towards the principle, getting towards the ultimate, that even not eating is not a burden. Like it's just normal for you within a day. Now, what happens these days is that not eating is manifested through practice. What happens there, if it's manifested through practice, not eating for the whole day, is that it brings its weeds together, whereby it brings the aspect of mana, like of pride, that I am able to do this. It brings the aspect of pujartham, meaning other people should revert to me because I'm able to do this. Other people are not. Because you are able to get there through practice. But they forget the essence of it. And as we can see here, Krishna has pointed out all of them. Only if you're sattvika that you can keep to the essence. If you're rajasic and tamasic, you're not able to keep to the essence of what any practice is meant for. So when you're able to get to the essence of what upavasa means, what not eating for a whole day means, the essence is the meaning of the word in Indian philosophy, like upavasa, meaning you should be seated near the ultimate, so near that not eating for the day is just like, you don't need to think about it. It manifests itself automatically. So that is what austerity means. Like, you can forget the state of your body because you've gotten onto something so great onto your life. And just to fix the grounds with the modern world, like what is happening around us right now, just imagine a person who can go into sports, like who can practice sports so much that he has to be reminded of eating. Yeah? There are such people who are so much into their own careers, or they're so much into their own hobbies that they forget it. And that doesn't really matter. Their hobby matters more. So even just putting into context in that place, you can see that there are some times whereby not eating or not drinking manifests itself automatically. But then what Krishna is saying here, that is fine, but then take it onto a level up, not onto that level only, but a level up whereby it is directed towards the ultimate principle, rather than something that just benefits you in this world.
Thank you, Yogeshwar. That was just amazing. And I think what it really does is it shows when you were talking about working for the sake of doing works or doing action for the sake of doing the action and not for the fruit, and how fulfilling that can be. And also when you were talking about devotion, is being devoted to something not because of what you can get out of it, just because of that thing. So thank you. Anything else you want to add?
No, that's done.
Okay. So does anyone else have any questions or comments before we move on? If not, David, can you read verses 20 to 22?
Yes, I can. Charity, which is given without consideration of anything in return, at a sanctified and holy place, and at an astrologically auspicious time, given as a matter of duty to one qualified, that charity is regarded as of the nature of goodness. But the charity which is given with expectations of some return, or desiring some result, or moreover with reluctance, is understood as the nature of passion. That charity which is given disrespectfully and scornfully at an inappropriate place and time to one unworthy is described as of the nature of nescience.
Thank you, David. Yogeshwar, whenever you're ready.
दातव्यमिति यद्दानं दीयतेनोपकारिणे देशे काले च पात्रे च तद्दानं सात्विकं स्मृतम्. So Krishna is going on to the fourth aspect, whereby Shraddha can be shown, where devotion can be shown, where your values can be shown, what you are can be shown. Because Krishna in verse 3 of this chapter said that a person who has the utmost Shraddha, he becomes what he has Shraddha in. So Krishna here is saying that what does Sattvika charity mean? We give so many donations, we give charity, but what is at the back of our mind when we are doing this type of charity? So that's the first aspect Krishna is putting in front, is that What is at the back of your mind when you're doing this charity? Datavyam iti yaddanam diyate nupakarine. So the first aspect that Krishna wants to put forward is the charity should be done for its own sake. That charity is good in its own self. If it's done for any other benefits, as we shall see, that is going to become of the Rajasic type. Charity itself has its own nature. It has its own benefit on its own. Now, what truly happens in all these aspects? It's like when we are going to sleep, and if we have the thought of, I want to sleep, I want to sleep, I want to sleep, you certainly realize that you can't sleep with that thought in your mind that you want to sleep. The same thing happens here, that you're going to get the benefit out of the charity. But if you have that at the back of your mind that I want that benefit, I want that benefit, I want that benefit, what will happen is that it won't come to you. Like the essence of charity just won't come to you. So having that example at hand, what I want to put forward is that what donation should be done for, what charity should be done for, is for charity itself, because it has value in its own self. And another thing, anupakarine. It should be given for the reason that I don't want back anything. It shouldn't be for the reason that if I give you, I expect something in the future back from you. Like if I've done something good to you, then in the future, you should also do something good for me. That should not be in the context at all. What should be in context is that I am just doing good because that's what I want to do. That's what is supposed to be done. Because that's my nature, to be good. And if that flows from inside, if that flows from the basic swabhava, if that flows from your own nature, then you don't need anything to attach to it. You don't need anything from what's outside to attach to it. It just manifests itself as it's supposed to be. This manifesting itself for nothing else apart from its own benefit, that it is of its own benefit. It has its own benefits. Then Krishna is saying that is of a sattvic type. Now, what happens? Sometimes we don't have this when we're doing a favor onto somebody else or when we're giving charity. Like, for example, if somebody's wallet on the street just falls off, when we take the wallet up and give it to that person, when we give it to that person, it should be for its own nature. What sometimes happens is that when we take the wallet up, we don't have something that he should say thank you. But then when we give the wallet and then he doesn't even say thank you and just moves on, we feel that he didn't even say thank you. Now, just introspect. What does that mean? Did we have something in our minds that he should have said thank you from the time that we picked up the wallet? Now, some things are so unmanifest within ourselves as well, because that's how life is, that we don't realize them. We had that thought from the time that we picked up the wallet, up to the time that we gave the wallet, that he should have said thank you to me. Rather, Krishna is saying it should be the opposite. Krishna is saying that you should be grateful that you got to pick up the wallet and give it to him, and to be good to another person. And when you're able to be grateful for that, for itself, and you're just grateful that, oh, an opportunity for me has come, that I can just do good for its own nature, then Krishna is saying this is of the sattvic type. Another 3 points that Krishna is putting forward is that it should be deshe kale cha patre cha. So the first point Krishna puts out is that it should be in the right environment. It should be at the right time. And it should be for the right type of people or for the right person. Now, the first thing, the right environment. Meaning, there is no benefit in giving so much charity in some places. For example, you can't go on giving charity in a business environment because everyone is doing business there. No one wants your charity. As in, if you just go on giving charity in a business place, in business environment, then you're not getting, like, there's no benefit of the charity itself. It's not that you're looking for the benefit of the charity, but then the charity itself loses its essence. That's not charity. That is your ignorance, in a way. Whereas when you're giving charity in a place like maybe in a poor place, like Africa, like give charity where it's needed. Give education where it's needed. Like in a rural place, in like even in India or in Africa, if you give that, like if you even just build a small building for people to get the right education there, however low that education may be in respect to some other places, that charity is great. Because you can't really provide everything at the first point in time. But even a start in that direction is a good thing. Like even providing some small food to as many people as you can, because you can't provide for all the people that need. But then just going to a small village and providing for the people who you can provide for, then that becomes deshe, because you're providing in the right place, where it is needed, not where it's not needed. Then the other aspect that Krishna is putting forward is kale, meaning there's some situations of drought, some situations of famine, some situations of disaster, like earthquakes and those that come about in the world. Now, those are the right times to give charity, to give donations. If you're even missing those times, like if you can't give donations or charity at those times, then you don't know what charity or the essence of charity, what it's meant for. What are you doing charity for? It is those times when you should give charity. And the last point that Krishna is putting is patre, meaning the right person. In the aspect of right person, yes, he should need the charity, that's fine. But more essentially, what it means that the person should be right. Meaning, he should also have the right intentions. It should not be that you're giving charity to a person, like to a person on the streets, maybe. Yes, he needs money. But when you give him money, what will he do? Will he just use that money and just buy alcohol and use his life on it? Or will he use that money to buy some food and fill his stomach, or fill the stomach of his family? So the intentions of those people, of that person who you're giving charity, also matters. If his intention is just go on and, I don't know, kill somebody, then is it good to give charity? Krishna will say no, because it harms the essence of charity rather than sprouting the essence of charity. So thinking about all these different aspects, the right place, the right time, and the right person to give charity to. When you've thought about all that, then just imagine a situation whereby you've gone into the rural places of such a village, and then you look at their faces, they're in need of food. You provide food to them. Just imagine the situation whereby you're giving them food, they're eating, and you see that smile that they have. Like, you just see it, that there is a different kind of sprouting that they have given. Like, there's a different kind of flowering that they have in their own lives, just with the small donation or with this small charity that you've done. Now, when you're able to see that flowering within them, there is also something that happens within you. There is also some flowering that happens within you. There is also some bliss that comes upon you. When you can see that bliss within yourself and within the other person, when you can see that flowering within yourself and within the other person, then Krishna is saying, after having known all these aspects, deshe, kale, patre, because a person who just wants to kill somebody else won't have that flowering within himself. If he doesn't have that flowering within himself, he can't bring that flowering to you. He can't bring that emotion to you because he doesn't have it. So, giving that charity towards the right person, at the right time, at the right place, what will that do? Slowly, it will change your perspective of having a fruit of charity, of being attached to the fruit of donation. Because you're receiving the fruit instantly, there's nothing else for you to get out of it. That is the fruit, flowering yourself out of the charity. So sometimes getting that flowering itself, like getting the essence of charity, it may be subtle, but when you get to it, it's really profound and it changes your life. And when you can see that, sometimes what will happen is that you'll just go back and back to give charity. Now, that going back to give charity, it will not be for your fame. It will not also be just to give it up. But what it will be for is that essence of charity, that happiness and bliss, that flowering that both of you are getting out of the charity. And then another aspect to charity is that you being grateful that you're able to give this charity first, and you being grateful that the other person is willing to receive this charity. Because when you're grateful that the other person is receiving this charity, what are you saying is that I am grateful because you have received this charity from me, and I've received what I had to receive, everything. I don't need anything else. That is what gratefulness means at that point. And that gratefulness is what prarthana is. That is what prayer is. Being grateful to what you have and the opportunities that you've been given. That is what prayerfulness means. That is what being in a state of prayerfulness means. Yattu pratyupakarartham palamuddishya va punaha diyate cha pariklishtam taddanam rajasam smritam. So you've talked about the sattvika type of donation or charity. The rajasa type of charity here, Krishna is pointing out, is that you do it for the only perspective or for only one reason, that you're going to get something back from them. That you're going to get, like, why do we do favors to other people? Because we know in the future we'll need a favor, and they will have the attitude of giving us a favor back. Now, that is good for society. Like, that is the best line for society. That's fine. But then, can we do it? Can we give somebody a favor just for the favor itself? Just because he needs a favor that you're giving him a favor, rather than because you need it back. Because sometimes what is just okay for society, what is just okay for society, it may improve the society at a short term, because like relations will be kept. But then look at the long term. If you only keep it at that, even societies will degrade. They will fall down at some time, because you can't keep going on even in a society for long, just for the reason that you give and you expect something back. But just imagine a society whereby everyone is just meant to give what he has, whether it is giving time to another person, or whether it's giving a favor to another person, or it's about charity to another person in need. Now, all those aspects, you're able to drill down into them. You're able to do all those aspects for their essence. And when you take into perspective such a society, even for the sake of society, such a society will thrive longer than just a society built on expectations among each other. Because what we've seen with expectations is that when those expectations are not there, what will happen? Like, because you're receiving love from another person, you're together. When you stop receiving that love from that person, what will happen? You'll break. That bond will break. Rather, when you can be together without expectations, just because it's good to be together, just for the value of its own self, then Krishna is saying that even for society, it can take it more. But even more than society, it can take you at a different journey, onto a different state of being, rather than the state that you are in, or rather than just the emotions that you feel. You'll be at another level. Then Krishna is saying that diyate cha pariklishtam. You will give, but then, when you always have that tension that you'll have to give, that, like, for example, just look at this example whereby I am doing a favor onto somebody else, and then they are thinking about when I'll ask back for that favor, or what situation I'll ask back for that favor in. That is pariklishtam. That means that there is a back and forth, there is a push and pull in between those two people. There is not a consensus. It's just a consensus because that person is in need and I am giving. But then what will happen when I ask back? Will I ask back when that person cannot give? That person doesn't know. So that is the push and pull that will always be there. And I will also be always in worry, because that is the only way I can think that somebody will ask back for a favor. So I'll also be worried that should I ask for a favor from them? Because I know that they may ask for a favor when I am not in the position to give a favor. Those back and forth, those pulls and pushes will always remain when that aspect of giving back, or that aspect of benefit from that favor, or that aspect of attachment to the fruit remains. Krishna is going on to the last type of charity. Adeshakale yaddanam apatrebhyascha diyate asatpritam avagyatam tattamasamudaritam. The first point is that it is given in the direct opposite of sattvika, which is adesha. The environment is not right. Like, the place in which you're giving is not right. The place you're giving the donation is not right, because they don't need it. Another point is akale. The time is not right. Like, it's all favorable times, and now you're going on giving on charity. Why that? Like, you've lost the essence of charity. You've lost the importance of charity, what charity is meant for on its own self. Then, yaddanam apatrebhyascha diyate. That charity that is given to apatra, meaning that person may be in need, yes, but what he has at the back of his mind may be harming another person, or even just going into the bar and just going into alcohol. Yeah. And then after doing that, you don't know what will happen to that person. So that is like apatra. You're giving to a person in need because he is really in need of that money, yes. But what does he want to do of that money? Is a point that you need to consider. When you're not considering all those points, and then also, Krishna is continuing that asat kritam avagyata. When you're giving the donation, you're trying to show that the person I'm giving donation to is lower than me. That is asat kritam. When you're doing that, you're not having that essence that sattvika has, whereby you're grateful that that other person is receiving your charity. In the tamasic, you're not grateful. Why you're giving the charity is because you want them to feel lower than you. You want to feel higher. That I am giving charity to somebody else who is in need. Why? Because they are low in society. That's why I just give them charity. That should not be the reason. To show people low. And then avagyatam. Now this is even a step beyond showing a person low. Is that because showing a person low is just in your intentions. Now avagyatam comes into your actions. You show them low even in your actions, whereby, and in your speech, whereby you give them the charity or the donation. While you're talking these words that, oh, I know that I am so great that I'm giving you all this donation. And you should be so grateful that I am giving this donation. Now, where that comes, you can see how charity is there, but the essence is just lost. When that happens, you're depriving yourself, first yourself, of any good that can come out of the charity. The second, you're depriving the whole surrounding and the society at large of the essence of charity itself. Because when you do this, and so many other people are doing this, people lose the essence of what charity really means. And there may even come a point in time whereby charity is just looked down upon. Why? Because whenever somebody is giving another person charity, he's looking down upon that person when he's giving the charity. So even giving charity may become a point that it's looked down in society. Why? Because it is not great at all. What it does is just make yourself great in regards to others. The first harm is to you, and then the other harm is to people around you, because even people around you slowly start losing the essence of what charity means. And this happens in any practice. This happens in any practice, in any tradition. Those practices were as pure as the source of any river. But then what happens is that when the river flows onto different terrains, and as it goes on, people put in filth. It just takes it. So what you see the river as at the source, and what you'll see the river as in the middle, you'll feel these two things are totally different. Like, this can't be. But that is what happens in any practice, in any tradition. Now, what you want to do as a person with that tradition is upon you. Do you want to say even the water does not exist? Or do you just want to put a filter plant at that point and say that I'll filter out all the waste, and I will keep the pure water with me? Or would you say that that water is full of filth, so I just won't use it at all? So this is what is happening right now, is that there's so many good things to so many practices, but what happens is that we just take these practices and say that we will not do any of these practices. Another viewpoint, however, would be that, yes, these practices do exist, and also a lot of moss has gathered up around. But what will I do to this practice is that I'll just scrape off the moss and keep the practice that as it's supposed to be. I'll keep the essence of the practice. I will filter out the water and keep the water, removing the waste. So it is upon us, what do we do with a certain type of practice? Whether it is tapas, whether it is dana, whether it is yajna, putting into English translation, whether it is sacrifice, or it is austerity, or it's charity. They're all good if you get to the essence. But when you move away from the essence, that is where all the filth starts arising. That is where all the moss starts gathering around the stone.
Thank you, Yogeshwar. If anyone has any questions or comments, you can either type exclamation point in chat or raise your hand in Zoom. Up first, I have Joe, followed by George. Joe.
Hi, Yogeshwar. Thank you again for presenting this evening. It's an interesting thing to look at charity as far as the right environment, the right time, and the right person. I almost get the feel, and correct me if I'm wrong here, that this is potentially almost utilitarian, because you're actually focusing on the outcome of the event as opposed to focusing just directly on the intention. So am I getting something? I mean, I know the Gita is definitely not utilitarian, but I'm getting this impression that it's very focused on the results rather than the act.
Yes. So what I would like to say about that is rather opposite, that it is maintaining the act. Now, why Krishna has to say deshe kalecha patrecha in Sattvika? It's not because he's considering what the outcome should come out of the charity. Rather, to maintain the purity of what the action is right now. Because what happens is, when you're giving out the money to a person who doesn't deserve it, what will happen? You won't be able to be grateful for that. Because that is an essential point of charity. You being grateful that the other person could receive this charity, and you being grateful that you're able to give this charity. Then what will happen is that you're going to give this charity to a person who doesn't need. This is just an example. Now, what will happen over time? One time, the second time, or the third time, you may be grateful. What about the fourth time? What will happen? The purity of that action will degrade, because you're now knowing that that person is not using it in the right way. Yeah? It's not about only what the outcome will be, but rather, how can you do the action so well that it never goes wrong? When you're able to be grateful at each and every moment of charity, it's like you're doing the practice of being grateful. You're doing the practice of maintaining the essence of charity. When you're trying to do the practice of maintaining the essence, what happens in the long term is that you maintain the essence rather than the outcome in that. So when Krishna is saying patre, like you should give it to the person, not only that he is in need, but because he will use it in the right way, he has the right intentions. It doesn't mean that you're looking for the outcome that will come out of your donation. Rather, he's saying that you can be grateful at this moment that you've given this donation. You can see the flowering within him and also be flowered within yourself.
Can I ask a follow-up? So the other part is I just want to make sure that when we're talking about charity, we're not talking about necessarily in monetary terms only, right? We're talking in terms of time and consideration to an individual. So me listening to someone, and then, okay. I just wanted to clarify that, make sure that that was the case.
Yeah, all those aspects are taken into hand, and I've tried to talk about all those aspects within different perspectives. Even giving favors, yeah,
right,
is a type of charity. Even like giving your time to somebody else who needs it is a type of charity. So all those aspects are taken within.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you, Yogeshwar. Up next, I have George, followed by Jyoti. George.
Thank you, Avani. All right, back in the 80s, the early 80s, I was practicing Orthodox Judaism, and my learning was that when someone asks you for money or, for charity, regardless of how poor or rich you are, that we're obligated to give. So my concern is not so much for the reward of giving, but it's much more for the avoiding the punishment of not giving. That's the first point. The second point is I also learned that we're not supposed to kind of question their merit. I mean, because if you see someone out in the street, it's really difficult to know how they're going to use that money. I mean, so basically, just as we have this dictum of holding everyone in a favorable regard to view people favorably, I think we're obligated to do that to those we help in that way. Because again, when we don't know, we may think, oh, this person may be using it for a disadvantageous, unbeneficial cause, but do I have enough certainty about that to deprive this person charity? Thanks.
Yes, so that is talked about in length in the Dharma Shastras. I'll just point out a little. One aspect that Krishna is making clear is that there is no aspect that Krishna is saying that there is a disadvantage and you should be fearful of not giving. Rather, Krishna is saying you should be looking for these subtle things that you're getting just as you give. Not as a future thing, but just as you are giving, for the essence of charity, what it brings to you. So it's not for the fear that you're giving. Rather, it's just for the love that you're giving. Now, another aspect for whether a person is worthy and checking their merit. So when you are not able to make sure what sort of merit they have, then in the Dharma Shastras, what is said is that what type of charity you should give should also be bound. For example, if you think that there is a possibility that this person may use it in a wrong way, then give them food. Because when you give food, there's no way they will use it in a wrong way. They will eat it. If you give money, then they can use it in a wrong way. So if you feel that a person is hungry, then give them food. If you feel that a person needs clothing, give them the clothing that they need. If you feel a person is thirsty, give them the water they need. So when you're giving them that particular type of charity, rather than just giving them the money, there is less uncertainty that you need to keep to their merit. Rather, you can just increase the possibility of receiving the gratitude for giving the charity. You can increase the possibility of just doing the action without worrying about the consequences by the type of charity that you give, the things that you use for giving out the charity. Rather than money, you can say, I'll give you time. Rather than money, you can say, I'll give you food. I'll give you clothing. I'll give you the water you need. So in that way, you take out the ways that they can use that. They can only use food for its own use, and they can only use clothing for its own use.
Thank you, George, and thank you, Yogeshwar. Up next, I have Joyti.
Hi, Yogeshwar. My question is segue to George's, but in a different sense. If you give charity, monetary help rather than charity, to a relative who needs money to build his business or something, and you're giving him because because of your love or affection, and you realize that they are mismanaging the money, but you do still love. Is it okay to just, keep giving money and the hope that it will come, they will be able to manage their budgets and whatever and build it in a positive way? Or you just back off? You still have love for them.
So what distinction I would like to make is the love that we are saying, it shouldn't be attachment. It should be love. And when it's love, it's not just for relatives. It's for, like, love is something that is vast. It's vyapak. It's not just for particular types of people or for particular people. What we mean by love in this context is something that can be beyond what you are or what your family is, what your relatives are, something that can go beyond. And another aspect about merit of another person that you have brought up. Now, there, because some things are like of a personal nature, and there, because as I've said, that there are so many reasons that you give this money to the relative. One, like, because these are some things that I generally see. I'm not saying that it may really relate to this example, but generally, why do you give relatives? Is that you want to show that I will not back out from you, so you should not back out from me. So there's an expectation there. Another thing is that you don't want to be like, I won't give. You don't want to be the, what do you call it? You don't want to be the wrong person on the wrong side. You just want to go along. That's why you give. Another point you give is that because you're attached to them that you give. Because you're so attached, you can't say no. That's why you're giving. So all those reasons are the wrong reasons for giving, rather than the right reason, because they strip off charity its own essence and just makes it like a bodily thing, like you're just giving the money there, a thing of substance, rather than something of making the action have the essence in its own self.
Thank you, Joyti. Up next, I have Joe.
So just a very brief question is that is charity a duty? Is that how it's essentially seen in the Gita?
Okay, so charity is something that you're grateful for, anything. Yeah.
Right.
Whenever you're grateful for, and it is something to be grateful for rather than something that binds you. So when we say duty, what context are we saying duty? Charity is not something that will bind you in the long term. Charity is something that you do because of its own nature, because it is prayerful to do. You get into that state of prayerfulness whenever you're giving charity. That is why you give charity. Because when you put it into the context of duty, in the modern world, what duty means is that something that binds you. It's like rules and regulations that just bind you without giving you anything right now. Like they just bind you without having any essence sometimes for you. They may have essence for the society, but then they don't have any essence for you. It's like you're doing it because everyone is doing it. But rather, what Krishna here is saying, not just duty, like, but do it for something that is for its own use. Like, you're not looking for benefit in the future. You're not looking for attachment to the fruits. What you're looking for is the action itself. Like, what does that practice itself have? Rather than attaching it to duty or to fruit or to the future.
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Joe. Up next, I have George.
Thank you, Avanique. Yeah, actually, I want to, I think that charity is a duty because, like, within Hinduism and the other four major religions, we have a duty to do good. And if someone asks us for charity, then it's a good thing. It's a virtuous thing to do that good. And if we're refusing to do it, then I think we're acting without virtue. So I don't think you can separate the charity from virtue. Now, I think what you're saying is yes, it's a duty that's like the base command, but then ask yourself, why is it a duty? And that brings you into kind of like more of a Krishna consciousness that we're all connected, that we're one, that we're in touch with this kind of like universality to our reality. But we can't say that the act of charity is not also a duty to others to basically be good, to be virtuous.
Just one short comment that I would like to put forward on that, in that context, is that when we view duty in today's time, we view duty as something that binds us. Because this is what I intentionally say, that duty in today's time, what does it mean? Some rules and regulations that just bind us. There is no intrinsic value to it for us right now, but what it's just doing is helping us to cope with society. That is what we take duty for today. Rather, separating this from such rules and regulations, this should be done for the love that you have for other people, for the aspect that the ultimate is there in other people as well. The ultimate is there in other living beings as well. It is your nature to be good. And one thing I would like to point out here, if it's your nature, then you don't need to put a duty from on top. Because if it's your nature to be good and you are good, duty will just something that will bind you. Rather, when it's your nature, you're doing it because the action has value rather than it's your duty. The main question is why you're doing it. Are you doing it because you're doing it out of love, because it's your own nature? Or are you doing it just because it is your duty? Because when you're doing it just because it's your duty, sometimes you lose the essence of it. You just keep the charity.
Thank you, George. Up next, I have Rupali.
Hi, thank you for this another wonderful session. I wanted to ask, if you are the recipient of charity, whether it's somebody's time or money or a gift, what's the best way to receive it? Because sometimes our own limitations come in the way that sometimes we don't want people to help us. We feel that we can do it all. And what is the most graceful way to receive charity? Thank you.
Yeah. So this is an interesting thing because Krishna has said that a person who really needs it is whom you should give the charity to. Now, what about if you are on the receiving side and you don't need the charity? How should you receive it? Now, one thing to note here is that the way you should receive it is with utmost gracefulness, that somebody is willing to help me at one point in time. So that gracefulness is really important, first of all. Then another aspect to it is that when you're receiving it, when you're in the receiving end and you don't really need it, then you should also allow the other person to understand this aspect, that right now in this point in time, what you're giving me, the time you're giving me, or the money or any aspect, any favor that you're giving me, right now I do not need it. So the first point is that being grateful that you're being given all this from the other person. The other aspect is being able to say, I do not need it at this time. Yeah? And sometimes we feel that, oh, everything should just be about acceptance. But there are points whereby you need to say no and you need to say yes. And to know the right place to say no and the right place to say yes is what all the teachings tell us. There is also a place to say no. And if you can say no at the right place at the right time, then you know the essence of no as well. Because it's not that only acceptance. It is also about knowing where to accept and where to say no.
Thank you, Polly, and thank you, Yogeshwar. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? All right, I'll give it another 30 seconds. Okay, so if there are no more questions or comments, I want to thank everybody for joining us today and for your contribution. Thank you, Yogeshwar, again for doing this tonight. It was a very great session, and I agree with Jyoti. It was very informative. So with that, good night, everyone.
Thank you, Avneet. Good night.
Good night.